425 East Glen. This is the Jake Feinberg Show. And thank you so much for being part of the program today. My guest today, one of the most unheralded and fearless pianists who came of age prior to full interconnection. And he's straight off a couple of gigs up in New York City with Jimmy Cobb and Eddie Henderson, Eric Alexander. One of my favorite players across the board, Larry Willis. Professor Larry Willis, welcome to the Jake Feinberg.
Thank you so much.
You're working over at Peabody now, is that right?
No. I just live here in Baltimore. Although, I'm on the road quite a bit. And as you very, very well articulated, I was just in New York this past weekend, and I'm going to be playing here locally this weekend at a wonderful music venue called Andi Music, and it's just been a good ride so far.
Talk to me a little bit about Baltimore now vis-a-vis Baltimore back when you traveled there with Jackie McLean.
It's changed quite a bit. And I think you probably are well informed and astute. In fact that, we live in a very, very weird society here as far as art is concerned.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly when it comes to the art form called jazz. And when I came here with Jackie back in 1965, there was a very vibrant jazz community here, okay, with several clubs, and they had a great jazz society here, the Left Bank Jazz Society, that had, they were really, really carrying on the tradition of the music and having all kinds of people come in and play, and I played for them, with Nat Adderley and with James Moody and people like that. And these circumstances are no longer in existence. And as I think, there is really only one jazz club here in Baltimore that has, a consistent jazz policy. Okay,
mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, it's located in a neighborhood that is very crime and drug ridden, and it's just weird. In order to get into this club, you have to be buzzed in, which sends another kind of message about the safety of that area.
Wow, that is really fat. So you're telling me there's a really heady jazz club, but it's in a really dangerous neighborhood.
Yes, it is.
And in the past, I'm just trying to get a feel for this, Larry, because I as a journalist, younger journalist, I'm trying to think back. I mean, the Left Bank, or even the clubs back when Gary Bartz was growing up, or there,
right.
Blakey was coming in, you were coming in.
The North End Lounge is no longer there.
Exactly, but I'm saying like those were in neighborhoods but they weren't. The drugs have had a lot to do with the. I don't want to get overly general, but it's like I look at jazz and I say it is black classical music.
Yes.
But so it's improvisational, and it requires not only technique but also live in the moment improvisation, which only can be done by the African American. And now with the drugs and maybe more like the samples and the beats, to me it's like I don't know where that to me was so powerful, so sophisticated. And now you say to me there's one jazz club, which sounds great, but it's in a really rough part of town. I mean, how much do you account for the idea of just why did the neighborhoods, why did they lose that communal feel that was there so palpable when you were first coming up?
Well, I'm going to answer this way, and at the risk of sounding political, but so be it. when I look at our society, the economic landscape, okay, and whatever have you, and I relate it to jazz or music in general, our culture, okay.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I have noticed is that our culture is continually being stifled, okay, and culture is the underpinning and backbone of any society. And when you see programs, okay, that are being pushed forward to nullify education, for example, to take away someone's ability to even just eat and clothe and house themselves, when there is a push to deny the right to be healthy, okay. This is at the underpinning, and I'm becoming more and more fearful of the move in that direction. Hopefully, I can count on the intelligence and the sensitivity of American society in general. But it's here. We're going to have to deal with this somehow or another, or else we're going to endure, negative consequences beyond belief.
Can you talk? I mean, I'm 36, and I feel this. I'm fearful too. But what if there's not a course correction? What kind of things are we in store for? What do you see as an artist? Why is the picture so bleak?
Well, culture
Yes.
and
No, I
art
want to. Yeah.
and music
Right. Right.
stimulate the human spirit and the human intellect.
Right.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and if these attitudes are allowed to move forward and persist, they're going to deny and destroy, that energy that society must have coming from its culture. And when you see, for example, when I came along, if you were employed in a jazz club, okay, you worked there at least for a week's period, if not longer.
Mm-hmm.
And it has been relegated basically to weekends now, okay? And just the mere fact that having that time space limited the way that it has become, okay, in my view, denies people access on a daily basis to things that fortify their spiritual life. And my big problem with all of this is that I'm fearful that we're going to become spiritually dead here. And once that happens, anything can happen.
Larry, I don't know, I'm a Pisces, but I feel the same way, man. I really, I mean, this is not going to happen tomorrow. Although I will tell you, if it makes you feel any better, even in crazy towns like Tucson, there is that intellectual sensitivity bubbling up. I just don't know at this point. It's so, you talked about the economics before. When you were coming of age, we were awash in a lot of additional money. The tax base was very different. There were
Yes.
opportunities all over the place. I mean, I think that's part of it also is that nowadays the resources are shrinking, and so therefore the first thing that politicians or people want to cut are quote unquote the arts, but they don't realize how spiritual that stuff is because they're not tapped into it at all.
No, they're not tapped into it, and they're the people who man the control.
Exactly.
And history, has shown this happening before. Okay, and I'm referencing the Germany, for example, of the 1920s and early 1930s, and we all know all too well what that produced. And we don't need another Holocaust. We don't need another Hitler, okay? And when I see people, and I'm going to go on record as saying, when I see people like the Koch brothers and Grover Norquist, and all of these, and I'll even venture to say our Supreme Court, which has basically, supported this move towards absolute control by through money and through the power that money has been allowed to have in our social discourse. It's quite frightening, and money is in many respects a form of drug. It's a drug in itself. Anything that you become addicted to potentially becomes a drug and a mind-altering issue. Okay, and this is what this seems to be all about.
And it also, I don't know, you've articulated it about as well as anybody I've talked to, but I tend to look at it also as a way of saying, the way it's being measured now is not by the the quality of the person themselves. It's that if you're not making money, you don't count. You don't count. And to me, that's void of any type of love or spirituality or anything like that. And that is when you sort of get this. I don't want to. This is a little bit heavier direction than I thought. But how did you tell me? Like, just okay. So you go up on the train this weekend. I mean, I saw Jimmy Cobb play a couple New Years ago, and it was just Harold Mayburn was playing. I believe Eric Alexander was on the gig, and tell me about the music. I mean, do you when you finish a set, do you say, how do you feel like the audience? Do you feel like there's a lot of active listening? That was the one thing that kind of bothered me about the show. It was at the Iridium. I just felt like people didn't even know what they were listening to, because they don't get to listen to it 4 or 5 days a week. They hear it once.
Well, it also has to do, there's an old saying that so goes the host, so goes the party. Okay. There is a tremendous difference, for example, between what goes on, for example, at a club like Smoke or the Village Vanguard, as opposed to what goes on at the Iridium. Mm-hmm. The Iridium is in Midtown, and it's at the heart. It's in the middle of the tourist business in New York City. Mm-hmm. And people who would normally go to the Iridium are not necessarily vested in going to hear music and being entertained by a certain brand of a musical art form. Okay, they're there because they're tourists by and large. Okay, but when you go to Smoke, and the attitude of the ownership, it sort of moves in that direction.
Exactly.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
We were supposed to have played there with Jimmy Cobb and the Kind of Blue Band. And this was supposed to have been Christmas, during the Christmas season, okay, maybe prior to Christmas or between Christmas and New Year's. I forget when the date was originally put forth. But because the club is business oriented, we got canceled for an act that would bring in more commercial money, and having that room rented out for private parties or whatever, Christmas parties. That kind of thing doesn't go on, okay, at Smoke, because they're dedicated to presenting the music. Okay, mm-hmm. The same as for example the Village Vanguard, which is part of a tradition and legacy. Okay, but you don't have the availability of the music anymore, simply because we moved in such a commercial direction as far as how it's being presented, and how the public has access to it.
You know, I wanted to ask you about. I feel like in my research, were you part of the Jazz Samaritans?
No.
But were you the band with in the mid '60s? Did you play at Slugs a lot?
Oh yeah. As
And
a matter of fact, I
yeah.
played uh, one of the first engagements at Slugs when it opened as a jazz venue with Jackie McLean.
Hmm.
With John Orr and J.C. Moses, and I played there a lot with Jackie and other artists. Uh,
I'm just trying.
and
What I love about your sound is that it is. I guess I'm trying to figure out how you were able to meld the technique that you or the training that you received, and how you were able to put the gospel and the jazz and the rhythm and blues all together. And I don't know if that had to do with the fact that I mean, was there were you even referring to the music as jazz? Was that even or is that a
well,
term?
for me,
Yeah.
jazz was just a label,
Mm.
okay. But I was trained, in high school, okay, in traditional Western European music, okay. But I grew up in Harlem, okay, and this music, for example, was available to that community 7 nights a week, okay, and a lot of these places were in walking distance from my home. So the music was there in the street, accessible, to anybody who wanted to hear it, and it was a part of that neighborhood culture or the city culture at that particular point. And unfortunately, here we go with economics again. Uh, uh, this notion of integration, of course, is a very valid and beautiful moral principle.
Right.
But by the same token, it's only in principle if it doesn't work.
I love this. Yeah, keep going.
So consequently, the clubs like Count Basie's and Brankers and Connie's and Small's Paradise and the Club Baron, for example, that music ended up moving downtown, okay, and it denied the community that it existed in access to this music. Okay, these places are either grocery stores now or restaurants or whatever have you. They have no connection with the legacy and the culture of the past. Okay, and the music has moved downtown into areas where the people who inhabit that community don't travel, because first of all they cannot afford it economically.
How do you feel about? Yeah, because what happens is then you take that culture out of the street in Harlem, and then all of a sudden, younger generations don't know where they came from, and that to me is the I guess, why did you move to Baltimore? I mean, I guess, do you feel that?
Well,
Yeah.
I'm going to, I studied. My piano teacher was a great man. His name is John Mehigan.
Hmm.
And what I have noticed, okay, is something that he noticed, it started to happen way before I became truly cognizant of it, okay? New York City, and as he so eloquently and aptly put it, New York City has lost its atmosphere for greatness, okay?
Hmm.
All right, and an example of it, when I was coming along, first started playing, guys could cohabitate in lofts and have rent parties to put money together to pay their rent, okay? And we would get together and jam and share, what we were learning with one another, and there was a vibrancy that came out of that nurtured the music around us. now these places, these lofts, okay, in some of the areas that might have cost tops $200 a month to rent, these lofts are going for millions of dollars now. Okay, and New York has been turned over to real estate developers, and the area that I grew up in, which was very vibrant, and I was very, very blessed to have grown up in an atmosphere of greatness. Okay, not only was the music accessible, but our heroes and community leaders were there with hands-on attention. For example, there was a great track star, okay, who participated in the 1968 Olympic Games in Mexico City, whose father had a shoe repair shop in the building that I grew up in. His name's John Carlos. And I used to play with him. We were kids out in the street, playing shuffleboard or stickball or whatever have you.
Right.
Or right around the corner from me, there lived a 5-time world boxing champion by the name of Emil Griffith. One of the Brooklyn Dodger great baseball players, married a lady that lived in my block, 2 blocks from the Polo Grounds. His name's Roy Campanella.
Wow.
And people like Campy, they had businesses in the community. People like the great, I think I would have to say, the greatest boxer I've ever seen, and probably the greatest boxer we'll all ever see. His name's Sugar Ray Robinson. Had a business in the community. All right. My father used to run a garage. Okay. And he parked the cars of 2 New York Giant baseball players. One of them was so kind to give me a baseball when I was 12 years old by the name of Willie Mays. And I got a chance to meet Jackie Robinson in the lobby of the Apollo Theater. All of that's gone. And the real estate developers have put up, housing there where African Americans from that community can no longer can't afford to live there.
But I want to say something. I think there's an important point that you're trying to make, and that is that Campanella and the politicians and the athletes, they lived within the community.
Absolutely.
Okay, so the difference now is like someone like Bella. I read this a while back where Jay-Z, was taking a lot. Belafonte said, you're really doing a disservice, and it's not just about, today you have icons, but they just they throw money at, they give money, but they give it over to other people to do stuff with instead of themselves putting themselves into the community. So
they don't reinvest in the community.
Not even, and it's not. See, but you were talking about before about just money being the end all, as the idea of saying, I'll give $2 million to this YMCA and then I can get my name on a board.
Yeah.
But I'll never show up there and actually sit there and talk about what. See, it's not authentic, Larry. It's not authentic. So people still say New York is the best place in the world. You know why? Because there's something for everybody, meaning there's one jazz club left. So if you want to go see jazz, you can still go see jazz. To me, it's really gotten to this point of accessibility where McLean, Blakey, Woody Shaw, Miles, Cold, those guys, you could go and the sweat from their brow would fly into your drink.
Right.
Now it's like there's entourages and there's you get these convoys, and you're like, okay, so those people must be really special because they got 79 people surrounding them. It's not. It's to me, and the music reflects that as well. And so I mean, I think it more to the point. It's that the reason I asked you about Baltimore was because I wanted to know in your soul how much you feel like you want to try to find a couple of cats that at least affect some people on that level, because you did live through that amazing period of time. And it's so important for you to share that kind of stuff. And I just wonder if that plays into any of your mentoring or any of that stuff now in your life.
Well, it does, because I come from that spirit and I'm cut from that cloth. But the opportunities to even get to first base, if I can use that as an example.
Just a single, yeah.
the opportunities just to get to first base, have been severely limited, and all I can do is what I can do with what I do and the way that I do it, and hopefully, my positive efforts in that area might rub off on somebody or something else that will affect us in a positive way.
Well, let's. I got a piece of music here. I'm not sure the last time you heard it, but let's take a listen to it, and then we'll come back.
Sardine.
I'll tell you, you want to talk about lineage. For my younger daughter, when she's tired, I dance her to sleep to that. There's another move that's called Movement, and then there's another movement from Mirror Image, 1974
Yes.
album. Unbelievable. I mean, Larry, that is the most electric. Was everything being done like in the studio? I hear that African, that cuica instrument from Ralph McDonald.
Well, that's Don Ramal.
Don Ramao. Yeah, I love.
Yeah, who was a percussionist with one of the. I think he was one of the original
Weather
members
Report.
of Weather Report.
Absolutely. No. My question is, in the studio, that album is so on the razor's edge, and I think all the guys are great, but I look at you and Ron McClure, and I said, you guys ripped that album up, and I said, was that live? Everybody was doing it live?
We recorded that live. I mean, there were some overdubs and whatever have you, and some sweetening, but the heart of those tracks on that record were done live in the studio.
Unbelievable! It's one of my favorite albums,
and that's what one of the reasons why I joined Blood, Sweat, and Tears was the level of musicianship for a commercially successful band at that particular time was extremely high. And I think Rolling Stone once said we had more degrees in music than probably any band in rock and roll history.
But
this is how we felt. And there were a lot of, most of the guys in the band were jazz players, okay, or coming from some sort of jazz experience. Certainly, one of the stalwarts of that band was the drummer Bobby Colomby.
I love
it. And Bobby's brothers were involved in jazz, not only from a music presentation point of view, position. His brother Jules was involved with Prestige Records and what's the other label?
Muse or something?
Riverside.
Sure.
Riverside.
Sure.
And his brother Harry was Thelonious Monk's manager. And Bobby received his first drum set as a gift from Max Roach.
When I hear his drumming, that was the thing. I remember talking to a pianist, Alan Broadbent.
Yes.
Okay, and he was with Woody Herman at that time. And
right.
He said to me he goes, one thing that was turning us on a lot, because, Woody was touring the country. He goes, a band like Blood, Sweat, and Tears that would play, more commercial music and then all of a sudden swing into these jazz changes. It was extremely enticing. But I say, if you take Willis out of that band, I mean, here's another question. Are you friends with, or did Herbie Hancock admire your playing? Did you have admiration for each other?
Well, let's put it this way. I went to Manhattan School of Music, okay, and from the High School of Music and Art, and there was a trumpet player at the High School of Music and Art during my senior year, whom I met, became friends with, who was a member of the Marshall Brown Newport Youth Band. Okay, his name's Jimmy Owens, and he was a private trumpet student of Donald Byrd's. So when I went to Manhattan School of Music, he was telling me about this young piano player that Donald had brought to New York from Chicago. And one day I was coming out of a practice room, and this guy was coming in, wearing wearing some sort of a disheveled trench coat, with a sport jacket and shirt and tie with a Windsor knot, and he sat down at the piano and just started to play, and my jaw dropped. Okay, and he tells the story now, and we struck up a conversation, and then we introduced another. Okay, and I said, my name's Larry Willis. He said, oh, my name's Herbie Hancock. And that's how Herbie and I met, and we have been friends ever since. Okay? And needless to say, he and his vast talent was a tremendous influence on how I thought about music. Okay? And
Can you explain?
Herbie's just, he epitomizes the highest degree of musical eclecticism. Okay? And I mean, that's how we met. We became friends. We would go to baseball games together, and we would hang out in each other's homes. He'd come over and visit me, and my mother would cook. As a matter of fact, he and his wife, I was with him when he met his wife, Gigi. And yes, to answer your question,
yeah, that's
Herbie
so beautiful.
has had a very, very, very profound effect on my life.
I feel like when I listen to that song, and I listen to it all the time, that movement we just took in, and I hear you playing, I'm like, I said, going back, I bet Herbie used to come and watch Larry play, and vice versa. I feel like you had a huge mutual admiration for each other's playing, because I hear you're playing. I
think so.
I hear you're playing and his playing, and I hear his playing, and I mean, I don't know. Tell me a little bit about. Wow, I'm a little stunned. That incredible stories, man. Tell me a little bit about when you first got your first Fender Rhodes, and what band you were in.
I got my first Fender Rhodes. Okay, I was introduced to the Fender Rhodes electric piano because I took Joe Zawinul's place in Cannonball Adderley's band.
Oh my God! Oh wow!
And because of the success of the electric piano, and the entrenchment of the electric piano in the music that Cannonball's band was playing at the time, vis-a-vis Mercy, 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 I got to meet Harold Rhodes, okay, and loved the sound of the instrument, and just hanging out with Herbie a lot, I got more and more attached to it. And when I joined Blood, Sweat, and Tears through the fact that we had a Selmer Ampeg endorsement at that time, and I think they were the main distributors, or the distributors by that time, of the Fender Rhodes electric piano. I got one of the first 88 key Fender Rhodes electric pianos.
I love it. What was it about the sound that was so infectious to you?
It's just the timbre of that instrument. It made you have to approach it differently. First of all, it's not really. I couldn't really call it a piano, even though that's how it was marketed. It was an instrument all into itself, and I just wow, just the sound and how the sound of it, could be so infectious in the music that was going on at that time.
Like on the West Coast, you had, in the early 70s, Denny Zeitlin and other cats, George Duke. They'd have these big Moog synthesizers, and they'd have to lug them around like to different venues, and it would take hours.
That was one of the drawbacks about the Fender Rhodes. It was heavy to transport.
I'm trying to, because, how did you align yourself? There's some other cats. What you were saying before was really interesting too. I wanted to say this, is that there were guys like Norman Granz, And there were guys like, there were other cats, and I'm going to, like Orrin Keep News, other people like that who said, if you're going to cut an album, on Verve, I don't, their mentality was if it sells 10 copies, so be it. Because the music itself is what our label stands for. And I say to myself, another one of these guys that really seemed to get that was a businessman, but I think he was also pretty. It was Sonny Lester.
Yes.
And how did you come across Sonny Lester? Would you describe him as somebody who understood what the music was about, and which is ultimately why Groove Merchant was created? Can you take us through that a little bit?
Well, understand that he was involved, record-wise, in a jazz experience prior to forming Groove Merchant Records. Okay, and one of my favorite all-time jazz records was a record that he produced with Roy Haynes, Miroslav Vitals, and Chick Corea. It's called Now He Sings, Now He Sobs.
Mm-hmm.
And he felt, an attachment to that music, okay, in a very, very special way. And so, and certainly at that point in time, trying to forge a successful label, involves so many other business issues, who's going to distribute your product, and how you're going to get your product exposed on the airways, and how you're going to get your product reviewed and made available and have some sort of visibility, in music publications. And by that time, this whole industry had started to move in another direction that, in a sense, was anti-music. It was just more about business than anything else. And if you didn't have the wherewithal to compete with that, then you kind of went by the wayside.
I was going to ask you about the album Inner Crisis.
Yeah.
What were you already feeling this detachment from what the music and the culture vis-a-vis what was happening with the industry? I mean, is that, or was there something going on in your life that was? I mean, there are so many. All those songs are in the moment songs. On the Coast, and then there's another. There are just so many incredible tracks, and I just say to myself, what was Larry's? What were you feeling inside? Did it have to do with the fact that you felt like you guys were that there was a loss of control or a loss of creative control because of all these other business aspects that were polluting the music itself?
Well, I have been adamant as I possibly can, no matter what music my eclectic or hopefully eclectic viewpoint might produce. I'm going to play music as an artist, okay? Because this is the vehicle that I have been blessed with and that I have at my disposal to expose or deliver how I feel about life, okay? And an artist, his ultimate aim is to reflect on the life and times that he lives in. And I would never capitulate to just trying to play music in order to make a big dollar.
Sure.
I come from a faith-based background. I am a man of faith, and I remember Jesus Christ saying to a very wealthy man who was seeking salvation and eternal life that he would not, his chances of attaining and achieving that, if he persisted down that path, were about as good as a camel going through the eye of a needle. When I started to do this, I never considered doing this for the sole purpose of becoming rich and famous. You know, money, of course, you know, is a necessity in all of our daily lives, but that's not what motivates me to do what I do.
Do you how do you account for, like with George Cables was raised by his mother? A lot of cats, you know, it seemed like the values they got from their parents were essential, and the community around them. Isn't that? I know it's harder today, especially in music, with all the supply and demand. There's just so much information out there. It's hard to even create an identity, like you said. In some ways, it might be even harder today. Probably is. But what do you think about the idea of? I mean, how do you talk to younger cats that don't have that understanding and depth of these guys like Max Roach? You know, the idea that these guys were always pushing the envelope from a socialistic point of view. I'm sorry, from a sociological point of view,
Yeah.
and a humanistic point of view, but through real strength, not violence, but just strength, just strong, and expressing themselves through spirituality and music, or love, and I mean, to me, it's a visceral thing. I can feel it. You know, I wasn't there, but I can feel it. But there's a lot of cats that I know, even I talk to, I get so excited, they have no idea what I'm talking about.
Right.
How do you deal with that lack of depth, or how would you give advice to me to approach that? Because
All you got to do is keep doing what you're doing and keep believing in what you're believing in, and somehow or another, through perseverance, that will seep through. Okay, and if it gets through, it will influence. So that if it's I try not to be a person that gives advice. Let's suffice to say that I will make that. I'll put that forward as suggestion.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
But that's, in my view, is the avenue that you travel down.
Can you talk a little bit about your upcoming your schedule for the summer? I know you're playing at the Jazz Forum. That's originally how I was like, I got to get a hold of Larry. Mark Morganelli's putting on this part of the Blue Note Festival. But can you talk about other little projects that you got, maybe even locally in the Baltimore area that you got going on?
Well, because my schedule has evolved the way that it has. After the event at the Jazz Forum, the plan is right now for me to go back to South Africa and make another record with my dear friend Hugh Masekela. And I'll be there for 2 weeks, and then I'll come back home, and I've got some things to do with Steve Teray. And in August, I will be touring, I guess, in the West Coast with Jerry Gonzalez and the Fort Apache Band.
Wow.
And in September, I'm going to do a European tour with Hugh Masekela. In October, I've got some more things to do with Jerry Gonzalez, and then there are plans being made for Jimmy Cobb and his configuration that I'll be a part of to go and tour India, and then I'll come back home, and hopefully I'll be able to sit down and do some writing and whatever have you and prepare for another record.
What a prolific schedule, man. Are you kidding me? I'm so glad you...
all blessings from on high.
Do you ever feel like... well, no, that's the wrong question. I'm so glad you jarred my memory for a minute. How... Home is where the music is.
Yes.
Dudu Pukwana. When was the first time... How did you meet Hugh Masekela?
We were all students at the Manhattan School of Music. And he and I met, because we were all aspiring jazz musicians at the time. and he was there on scholarship from the Belafonte Foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how we met, and that's how we formed a friendship and musical camaraderie.
But then he went off and did you ever get a chance to play with the skipper, Henry Franklin?
Yes.
When did you? Because I know he was the one that was he was with this cat Abreu on horn. Al Abreu, thank you very much. And those cats cut they were the ones that cut grazing in the grass. But you were off with you were with Jackie maybe at that time. I don't know what you were doing in the late '60s, but then
when Grazing in the Grass was recorded, I was playing in a quintet at the New York Playboy Club, led by the great trombonist Kai Winding.
You know, yes, I now you just go ahead.
Then that lasted for about 3 years, and then I left there, and the first experience I had playing with Stan Getz, and then I went from Stan Getz to Cannonball, and from Cannonball, shortly after that, I joined Blood, Sweat, and Tears, and I was there for the better part of 7 years.
And when Hugh was living out with Stuart Levine in California, he called you up to do that album.
Yes.
That I was going to say, I now remember something. One of my first interviews I ever did. The Playboy Club, at one point, the quartet was you, Al Gaffa, and Dick Burke.
Yeah.
And I can't remember who else was doing that as well. I can't remember who else was in that band.
Well, the bass player was Earl May.
The Dizzy's bass. That's right. What to go to a Playboy Club to see that, unbelievable.
And we were all playing with Kai Winding at the time, and then Dick left, and Al Foster joined the band.
But see, there were opportunities for live music.
Right.
And I think that part of you, when you look at it, okay, it's the blessings of life. You get to see the world. You're going to Europe and India. What's funny about South Africa, but yet you come back here, and how do you feel about that? The idea that you're doing all this prolific art, creating all this stuff, but it's not really here.
Well, sometimes we are strangers in our homeland. Okay. There, unfortunately, the social demeanor of the United States is not steeped in any kind of cultural tradition. Just the art form of jazz is probably the only thing that was created here. Didn't come from someplace else. Everything else we deal with, even in our daily lives now, is a result of something coming from someplace else.
Well, Larry, I think we covered some stuff. I would like to. I'll send you a link. I'll send you a file to your email. With this interview. I really appreciate it, and
no problem.
And it was great, and
it's my pleasure, and all the very best to you in all things.
God bless you, brother.
Just keep the faith and keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
All right, take it easy.
You do likewise.
Bye-bye. This is the Jake Feinberg Show, and we'll see you all in a little bit.